What's really funny is now I'm watching you through the computer, because remember now, there's a delay in my phone. What's really funny is now I'm watching.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll see if it works, but we're live. We got a couple visitors on there. We'll see if anybody else is chiming in. If you can use now, when you're on your phone, do you have access to your other backup account?
Well, I'm on the shop computer too, so my regular account is I'm on my regular account on my cell phone, and it's recording.
Gotcha.
And that's over in what I just put over in the desk drawer, and then I'm watching here on the computer too.
Okay. I see we got 4 guys. All right, welcome to the Monday Night Live on the Mob. It's going to be a little different tonight. Usually our tech man, Daniel Check, takes over. However, I've got to do it all instead of just comic relief. And so I've got my Sharpie, because a lot of good guys like, Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno, they always have their sidekicks that have a Sharpie pen with them to write stuff down, even though I'm not going to write anything down. Got a couple guys. There's Jeff Ankeny. What's up, buddy? Triple threat, Jeff, for everybody does. Yeah, he's got 356s, I see Daniel Check's watching. That's great. Terry, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, Terry's missing looking at my butt.
Right. I'm not going to burp on live TV. BDO's watching. It's going to be a shit show, BDO. You should be over here, BDO. I'll tell you what, next weekend you're still in jail. I'm going to go out to BDO's house. We're going to do live from his garage, because then we can do paint detailing.
Perfect.
Yep, we'll bring my truck out and he can detail it for an hour and we'll watch him. All right. So tonight,
can everybody hear me halfway decent or no?
I don't know if anybody can hear you, but this is what I got going on, so you guys can see it. That's Daniel, right there. He's on my computer screen, and I don't know if anybody can hear him or not. And I'm trying to set my phone up by the computer. Let me see if it works. Oops. So say something, Daniel.
The Clintons killed the cat.
All right, the Clintons killed. I don't think, honestly, I've got my speakers cranked and I can barely hear you, so I don't think that's going to work. So tonight's subject is, you can hear him, Richard? Thank you. Richard said he can hear you. So
all right, perfect.
See, if I turn you up, I got speakers, but if I put the speakers on, then it mutes my microphone to you, so I can't talk back and forth. So anyways, Mark Levine says it's probably best if we don't. I'm not even going to comment because I'm in the new chair tonight. So tonight we're going to talk about what to do for starting up your engine. What's that?
Does the new chair have a special attachment on
it? No, it's flat.
You're not sitting on a special attachment?
No.
Okay.
Maybe we got to do a wife show one time when wives come in to talk about the toys they use when we're not around because we're in the garage so much.
That's up to you if you want to discuss about that.
Right. So anyways, tonight's show we're going to talk about, I did a little research. I think we all have a little knowledge of this. What to do when your car has been sitting for a while. And I'm going to repeat what Daniel says if you can't hear it. Daniel, how long are we going to start just talking about the winter hibernation?
Well, winter hibernation, I'm going to say that myself personally, my car, it will sit from about October, November until at least March or April.
Okay.
And myself, what I do is over the winter months, I put Marvel Mystery down the cylinders, and then I actually stick a ratchet with a socket on the front of the engine, and I rotate the engine every morning. Now, Crank says he doesn't rotate or doesn't twist his crank that often, but I do. So.
Okay, so for everybody here, somebody give me a shout out to make sure you hear what Daniel said, because that way I don't have to repeat it.
I can hear myself behind me in the desk drawer.
Okay, so. Very good. Yeah, so basically what you're saying is you like to go out, as your car sits in hibernation, you like to go out basically every day and turn the crank just a little bit to keep things lubricated.
Right, keep them lubricated. And the other part of that is so the valves don't sit in the same spot. Now, a lot of you guys don't have the big lift cams, like I do, or long duration or anything, where it's hanging that valve open and compressed really hard for a long time. I guess I don't have to do hand gestures tonight because nobody can see those.
The hand gestures are for me. I appreciate it, though. Daniel was doing hand gestures of valves overlapping and springs compressing.
So anyways, you don't necessarily have to have you guys don't necessarily need to turn them over every day, but turning them over, once a week or whatever is a good practice, just so the valves don't sit in the same spot and get weak. The valve springs don't get weak and whatnot. That's one thing, over the winter that I do just to try and help premature valve spring, weakening or wear. And yes, Mark Levine, I can see what you are commenting.
So Neil makes a point that there's no room to rotate the engine on two of his cars. And I've seen his cars. Obviously, he's got a lot going on under the hood. So what do you do at a point like that?
At a point like that, does he have room to come from underneath?
Can you come from underneath? I suppose they're going to want him up on stands or up on a lift to do that, right?
Yeah, if the car's low enough, then yeah, I at least put it up on stands, which actually, during the wintertime, putting the car on stands so the tires don't flat spot is a very good idea. Now, are we all going to put them on stands so they don't flat spot? Probably not. But it's a good idea, It wouldn't hurt. That's something to think about.
So let's say if there's a guy like me, or just a regular car. Obviously, I don't have a high lift cam or anything like that. But so we rolled it into the garage, and let's just say November, and we don't. And you're covering it up. What do you want to do to winterize your car?
Myself personally, I'm going to at least, since it's a daily driver, or not a daily driver, but a winter or a summer hot rod or whatnot, I would at least try to pull the plugs and squirt some sort of an oil into the cylinders, and then periodically, in the case where like it's going to be hard, like Neil, where it's going to be hard to rotate it, go out like once a week and bump it over with the starter, because we all probably keep them on a battery tender. So unhook the battery tender, bump it over, not necessarily crank it until it fires, but just kind of bump the key a couple times so it'll click over and, be in a new position. So it won't be sitting in the same spot.
Correct. I know that when I've never winterized a car per se. I kind of take the philosophy of what I did with my snowmobiles for summerizing them. A lot of guys fog the motor or take the plugs out, put oil down, and rotate around. And I just try to keep out. And like when I had snowmobiles, I'd go out once a month and pull it over and start it up, let it run up to temperature, shut it down, and that way I never got always got fresh fuel in the carbs and everything kind of worked its way through. And I know this year with my car, the longest it sat I think was 6 weeks. But other than that, I started it before Christmas. Started it at the end of or sometime around 1st of February. And I've started 2-3 times since. Now I know we're talking about the safety issues. Obviously, so say your car has sat all winter, and you just drove in and parked, and put the cover on. It's red and it's white and it's got a cover in the middle of Wisconsin. We'll say Mark Levine's car, for instance. What do you like to do to get it going before you actually fire it up?
Before I actually fire it up, the one thing I like to do is I will, turn it over. Like I said, turn it over every day by hand. And once I've put oil into the cylinders, to rotate it for the winter, I put the plugs back in it. But then what I try to do is in the springtime pull the plugs and rotate it over by hand at least, a couple of revolutions to, if there's any, excessive amounts of oil, that it will push them out the plug holes. But usually there isn't that much. And, you can go ahead and unhook the ignition and crank it over with the starter. So that way, when you crank it over with the starter, it will push push as much oil out as possible, and then go ahead and put the plugs back in. And I would, double check that, because a lot of us don't have a stock cam in the thing, so it's got some vibration to it. It's got that kind of stuff. Go through and check your header bolts, whether they're down at the collector or check them up at the heads. And then go through, check your distributor bolt. I've had one person that, my car was running great, and I went to go to fire it up in the spring, and now it doesn't run, worth the crap. And I went and I checked his timing, and his timing had moved like 3 or 4 degrees. And that 3 or 4 degrees on a car that has a, mechanical or a vacuum advance, that 2 or 3 or 4 degrees is a lot.
Right.
Now, real quick, I want to jump back to what we were talking. Neil was asking about change oil before winter shutdown or in the spring. So what I'm going to say is, Neil, in my honest personal opinion, what I would like to see people do is you put a thinner oil, whether it be fogging oil or Marble Mist oil or even WD-40 in the cylinders in the winter or in the fall. First thing I would say is get the thing fired up and let it run, so that way it will, one, burn off any oil on top of the piston and whatnot, and it'll push any of that thin oil out and into the oil. Now, it's going to dilute the oil a little bit, but it's not going to dilute it enough to really worry about. So what I do is I fire it up, get it up to operating temperature, and then so that way it's got all that thinner oil pushed out, and then what I do is I pull the drain plug and let it drain. Because as it's sat over the winter, it's had a chance for a lot of your gas that, had made it past the rings during the summer or fall since your last oil change. A lot of that gas and whatnot is evaporated, so the thinner oil that gets pushed past the rings, isn't going to thin it down enough to really hurt anything. So I would probably, fire it up. Well, that's what I do, is fire it up so it'll push all that thinner oil out, and then drop the oil. And once I drop the oil, then, put fresh oil in it. And what I usually try to do that is, like, an end of the day. I will try and do it at an end of the day, so that way I can pull the drain plug and let it drain overnight. Just so that way if there's, any little extra that might come out overnight, and anything, you got to keep in mind that when you have the engine hot, it's up towards the top. It's up in the top of the motor and everything, and it gives all that stuff a chance to drain back down in. So,
I like what BDO said, Richard Owens. He doesn't do any of that shit, and it's a good comment. But he pulls it in. I talked to him the other day, and kind of does, I suppose, a little bit. Besides the fact that I start mine up, but basically puts it in, shuts it off, takes the plug off the coil, cranks it over a few times, but before he does that, he changes the oil he changes the oil right away in the spring. That way all the crud is in the pan and it's ready to drain out. It's been dripping all winter. It's in the very bottom of the pan, and so he drains it out, changes it out, and does that. Now, I changed oil last September, so I didn't want to do it in the fall again because it was only a month later. But so he's got a good point. And then he just basically, by taking the coil wire off and cranking over, you're priming everything up before you fire it up, and that's a perfect way.
Yeah, that works quite well too. And there's plenty of different thoughts and different methods to the madness. You can do different things different ways, and 99% of the time it's going to be okay. To be honest, the best way to do it would be to pull the distributor and stick an oil pump primer in there and prime the oiling system. But in all honesty, who really wants to do that?
Right. Just so you guys know what we're looking at. Go ahead, keep talking. Well, I'm just doing Dan for you. It's a little caricature of Dan.
Oh, no. So, man,
I just did a quick little doodle for you.
Oh, I love it. I'm getting a bajillion laughs.
There you go. See? Since Dan just keeps talking, and we'll just... See, now as you're talking, I'm going to move it just a little bit.
Oh. Well, Neil, as far as the gas tank goes, the thing you got to remember is if you have ethanol or alcohol gas, if you have gas that has ethanol in it, it would probably be a good idea to run it fairly empty, to keep everything, keep as much out of it as possible, because that alcohol turns faster than regular gasoline. And the other thing you could do is run it down to where you're pretty close to empty. Go to the airport with a 5-gallon gas can and get 5 gallons of aviation gas. So that's going to do two things. That's going to put in leaded gas in there, which I know a lot of our stuff doesn't require leaded gas anymore. But it's a higher quality gas, and it actually will. It has, like I said, it has the lead in it, so it will kind of protect your fuel lines, your carburetor. So then, at that point, what I'd do is I would fire the car up, run it until you will notably notice the smell difference from pump gas to aviation gas.
What
I put the
I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
I would put the aviation gas in it, run it until you smell the aviation gas through the exhaust. Stable, Neil, is a good product, but there again, you got to remember that if you do have gas with alcohol in it, you're always going to have that alcohol in there no matter what. It's always an issue.
Yeah, Chris Dixon says he could drive it year-round. I wish I could, Chris. That's one of the reasons I would like to move someday, to get out of the rust belt here, as the holes are poking through in my Silverado and we can't drive our car. Richard, I know you got 110 because I smell it when I'm behind you the whole time. Now, go ahead. Somebody make a joke about being behind Richard and, the way his gas smells or fume smell. That's all right. I might have.
Well, you want to sniff at his tailpipe.
I sniffed his tailpipe. I'm not going to lie to you. We got to figure out how to get live going and then bring in videos, so when we hit the play button like Joe Rogan does or something on a podcast, so people can see the videos. So I'll tell you what, I made sure in the fall when the last tank of gas I got was ethanol free premium. I can only run the 91 octane. I probably should run with BDO one day and go get some aviation gas or 110 just for fun to have,
You would love it. Your car would probably love it too.
Probably run a little bit cooler even.
Yeah, you have a better octane rating, so yep. It will run.
I don't want to drop my mileage down because that's why we're all here, is for mileage.
Oh yeah, we're out here for mileage. We are tree huggers.
Yep. So one of the things also, I think one of the reasons I wanted to start mine is because I have heard some horror stories about using the Phytec fuel injection where guys have let them sit, and if you get the wrong fuel, it really screws with the injection. Hey, look, Terry just came up with a question. Kennedy, leaded gas will coat your O2 sensors if you're using any fuel injection for tuning. You're absolutely right, Terry. That's one thing. So besides from, obviously putting some oil down the cylinders, taking the plugs out, cranking it over, all gets good. One of the things that I did because of the accidents that I've had and the misfortune I've had is I put my car up on the jack stands the other day, just the front end, so I'm only half dead with Harbor Freight jack stands. But I put a wrench on absolutely every suspension and all the steering components again. And I know Richard always kind of laughs, once you do it once, you should be done. And that's true, but I learned that lesson hard the first time. And we got matching Yetis, so we had to do a little cheer for you guys. It'll be much better once you're back on in a week because you keep going to jail. I hate people like that.
It told me 27 days.
27 more days, huh? All right. Well,
yeah.
we'll get it figured out. But see,
yeah.
So anyways, Mr. Jim K., how you doing, guy? Anyways, so I put a wrench on everything. I went underneath. I hit my nuts and bolts on my rotors and my brake caliper brackets, everything. I went through absolutely anything that I could touch and made sure. And I didn't really find. I think I found one bolt that had a little quarter turn needed, but very good. It's an easy thing to do. I mean, there's barely any different sizes of wrenches needed. And I went down, and what I was actually doing the other day was I bought some, I think they're called cap head screws with the Allen wrench. I bought some chrome ones to change out the 4 bolts that hold on the core support. The core support bolts that I had were zinc plated, and they were already 2 years and are starting to rust. It was crap stuff that I got at Menards with Jim one day and just building the car. So I went to change those out, and 2 out of 4 of those were actually loose to the point where I could turn them up by hand. Richard, cheap-ass China crap. I don't know what you're referring to, but, if it's something I got, I'm sure it is. I put these on so I can read those cheap-ass comments. Anyways, so, but put a wrench on stuff, first of all. I'm not worried about detailing the car until I get a couple more miles on, put some fresh gas in it, stuff like that. Put the wrench on, crank it over, obviously pull a plug wire if you can. I know Dan earlier talked to me about pulling the whole distributor to prime the pump. Dan, you want to talk about how you do that?
Well, that's a matter of pulling your distributor nut and taking pulling the distributor up and out and sticking your oil pump primer in and running it for about 5 or 10 minutes just so it'll prime the oil system. And like I said, 99% of us aren't going to do that because, let's face it, we're kind of lazy.
Yep.
And really, there's other ways, other things to do that will get us the necessary oil in our oiling system. So, I'm figuring that most of us aren't going to do that. So, I would, that's what you're doing. You're distracting me with drinking your water so I wouldn't see. You're Daniel Check face.
You wait till we get next week. I'm going to have a bobblehead for you. I'll mold up a wobblehead. I'll mold up one. So, yeah, everything's cheap from China, but where else are you going to go? It is what it is. The post-it note is lame. David, it's okay. It's all I got. It was like 3 seconds of a sketch of Daniel. I'll sign it, and I'm sending it to you. I'm going to send it to Daniel. I'm sending it to Daniel first. He's going to sign it. Then he's going to send it to you.
All right.
And it better be in that wagon for like 4 years. So put a wrench to your nuts and bolts, get them tight, crank it over before firing up, and then please, one guy told me the worst thing is to do when you get that first startup is to shut it down right away. Always get it up. Yeah. Get it up to temperature.
Always get it operating temperature. I know, and I'm not picking on anybody. I saw last week somebody had put a video up that they fired their engine and they didn't have the radiator in front of it, so I'd assume there was no water in the thing. And granted, that was, I don't know if that was a new engine or an old engine. The first few minutes of a fire up, an initial fire up, are very critical. The first few minutes of a fire up on something that's been ran but sat for over the winter months is still fairly critical because, yes, the rings are seated at one point in time, and no, they're not necessarily going to come unseated. But if on something that's been ran before, but it's a good idea to run it up to operating temperature, in something that's been ran. Now, on a fresh engine, like I was kind of alluding to there, somebody had posted a video, and I'm not picking on him, I'm not growling or nothing. I'm just saying, it's kind of hard on the engine, and I would assume it was a fresh engine. I could be wrong.
I think it's a new engine to him, but I know it had been run either on the dyno or on the stand for break-in. I know he's done that, and he was just basically running open headers, and it sounded really good. And
but it's something that right there, you can build a lot of heat really quick without the water in it.
Yep.
To help cool it, and it can take the chance of distorting the cylinder walls to where you might have a cylinder not seal up, completely, even though the rings have been seated and, everything was fine before. There may be a little bit of an issue, on down the road. So those are just a couple of things to look at. And then, checking every nut and bolt underneath, even throughout the summer, we should still, when we're driving these, we should still check nuts and bolts here and there. I've had control arm bolts come loose. I've had, especially on polyurethane. And then I've had, shifter bolts start walking out. Yep. Just get underneath, check all that stuff, and kind of go from there, best you can.
No, I just think it's good practice. And I said, there's a lot of guys that I know, like I said, we don't make fun of anybody. I'm here, I'm learning as I go. I've learned a lot from Richard. I think he's still on. I learned a lot from Richard. I've become to actually like this. We'll be doing some live videos from Richard's house because we're going to be putting his new transmission in here in the next week or two, hopefully, or next couple weeks. And I like to learn as I go. And give you an example, even Bob Schaefer, he's on the page. He's got that nice gold 57 wagon that he's got. I think it's an 871 blower. You know which one I'm talking about? He did a nice video the other day of it running.
I think so.
And he put up a post about some transmission issues he was having because it doesn't want to shift. And he was talking about and the rear end. Yes, Richard, we are doing your rear end. See there, I did it again. I'm talking about his gas. Now I'm talking about his rear end. So, but Bob Schaefer made a post about aligning his bell housing or his scatter shield. And so I'm still pretty fresh in my memory, and we're going to be doing it at Richard's house also. So I'm like, hey. So I gave him a call, and I was asking him what was going on. Well, he has a scatter shield. I don't remember what brand, but he used to run just the standard stock Chevy bell housing. And he said that the shifting problems he was having was almost identical to the problems I was having. And last year when I had to change out my clutch. So I asked him about the pivot ball, and I asked him about the pivot ball distance from the face of the bell housing. I remember you and I had talked about this too when I was doing mine. And now, like a standard stock, if you have a 0.91 thickness flywheel, from the face of your bell housing, you should be 4 3/4 inches to the top of your pivot ball. And I don't know what it is for his scatter shield, but I was giving him the tips and hints to go where it is. And honestly, it just felt good that I learned that through, talking to you, True Love, Brian Machad, BDO, all of these things, like how to diagnose this stuff. And so he figures that's where he might have gone wrong because he doesn't have an adjustable pivot ball on his scatter shield. He just put in what came with it. It was used from somebody else and didn't adjust it, because what happened as soon as it starts to heat up, which is if your clutch is heating up, it's slipping, right? So right when it starts to heat up, he can't shift. He has to start double clutching because it's not disengaging properly. And
he doesn't have enough travel on it.
Right.
So there's a combination of things that come into play when you're dealing with the clutch travel and whatnot. The pivot ball, your bell crank. There's all sorts of little things that come into play, and there's even different throwout bearings. I've got a throwout bearing in my car that's about 2 inches thick. And I have adjustable pivot balls. The one thing that I will say about adjustable pivot balls is once you get them set, like you drive it, it's right. I know it sucks, but take the car back apart and weld that weld that ball so it's solid.
Right.
Because I've had too many times where they have backed loose and started the adjustment. Like you said, you start losing it, there's no adjustment there.
Well, what's really annoying about even my pivot ball, the stock Chevy bell housing, you can't, with the Tremec on it, you can't adjust it without taking your transmission off. It'd be really nice just to be able to release. It'd be really nice to be able to release that clutch fork out of the way just a little bit, reach in with a wrench and move things, but you just simply can't do it.
Yeah, there's not enough room.
Nope, not at all.
And trying to come through the fork hole or whatnot, you can't get in there to get onto the nut. And if you could, you still can't get in there enough to get leverage, to move it any.
Well, so I see Richard and Terry have gone back and forth a little bit about Richard's setup. Richard has right now, I believe he's got 411 rear end and a stock in his stock rear end, and it's he's got about 600 horsepower, the big block 468. And so last year, I believe in the fall sometime, he got his rear end built, and it's an 8 3/4 Mopar rear end that Jim Norn built and put together for him. So we're going to be putting that under his car, and then he's got a Tremec TKO 600 that he had in a Mustang at one time, and so basically beat the hell out of it. So he's been having that rebuilt, and so in the next coming week or two, we're going to be aligning his bell housing. I know he's got his offset dowels, so we're ready. So we'll be able to dial indicate everything and then get his transmission in. Hopefully that goes smooth and we can have it all done in a couple days and be ordering up a drive shaft. I don't know if he's checked his bolt patterns on his wheels yet. He's got really nice shaped Kragers on his car, and they do have Unilug, and so we're hoping it's going to be fitting the Unilug. We're hoping it's going to be fitting his Mopar rear end because it's got Mopar axles. See, Bob Schaefer's on now after we already just talked about his transmission issues that we were talking about, kind of the same thing. So, but you got to align the bell housing. Even if you got a Muncie, you really should, even though they're a lot sloppier than the newer ones. Everything's going to be better.
The big thing about aligning the clutch or the bell housing is that it gets the bell housing. It gets the center line of the crank in line with the center line of the transmission. So when you have those lined up, that keeps everything in line. So instead of what you're trying to do, for lack of better words, you're trying to touch tips and keep everything in line. Where if you're off a little bit, there's going to cause a tension inside of the transmission. Your crankshaft isn't necessarily going to move. It's going to be your input on your transmission. So when your input is off a little bit, it will cause shifting issues.
So no, and see, I'm flipping. I'm sure you saw it, Daniel. I got you. I flipped my phone around so they could see you talking on the computer screen.
Not yet. I haven't seen that part yet.
I see Mike Hummel's got possibly an M21 coming up for sale. Mark Levine, exactly, Mark. I was trying not to smile. Bob, you're never too late, Bob. We were just talking about the transmission talk that you and I had the other day, and about aligning the bell housing and the pivot ball height that you need to check on. And then Daniel, I'm going to switch it back to Daniel. Daniel, tell Bob again what you said about the throw-out bearing, the different sizes.
There are throw-out bearings that are different thicknesses, so you can get a thicker or thinner throw-out bearing. There's some of the throw-out bearings that are everything from an inch to almost 2 inches. And the thicker throw-out bearing, you're going to have, you're going to be able to get more travel out of that versus, having the regular throw-out bearing. What are you doing?
You're on screen. Don't worry about me.
Anyways, there's different thicknesses of throw-out bearings, and when you have a thicker throw-out bearing, you're terrible, Craig. You're terrible, man.
All right, we're going to bring Dan back after a little message from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is Lucas Slick Mist. It works good on cars, but I've used it basically on my I have it here in my office. I use it on my cell phone. I use it on my calculator. I use it on my computer screen. It works great with a little microfiber rag, keep everything slick and clean. And for a guy like me who moisturizes a lot because I'm almost 50 without wrinkles, it works good on my phone.
Turn off Craig's phone.
So that's what I got. But so we're back to Daniel. Daniel, back. You want to finish talking about the throwout bearings?
So anyways, there's different throwout bearings, and a combination of different different thickness of throwout bearings will help you with your adjusting. You know, yes, an adjustable pivot ball, but that'll also get your a thicker throwout bearing will get your all your stuff lined up, you know, better. So you might have to go to your O'Reilly's and talk to the guy that knows what's going on instead of, you know, the kid that doesn't know what's going on. But they should be able to find some different throwout bearings. And if for some reason you're still having issues, you know, message me and I'll see what I can figure out about different part numbers for throwout bearings for you.
No, that's good. I think we covered some good stuff. I'm not going to have. I don't. Do you have a trivia question for tonight at all, Dan?
You know, I didn't really think of anything this week as far as a trivial question. But that's about it for me.
All right, sounds like a deal. I will. I think we had. Let me see if I can flip that around. We had a little good talk. We're going to iron this out. Every week it's a different battle. Either I'm in jail or Dan's in jail, and we are what we are. But I'm doing my best to stay out of Facebook jail so I can be here. And
I'm doing my 27 days, and be sure that when I come back, that all I'm going to have for a mustache is just this little thing here in the middle.
Right.
And I will probably, by the time I'm done with Facebook jail, I will be, you know, saluting and
so you guys know, because obviously we know that I think Dan has got a good sense of humor, a little dry, I get it, and the fact that he puts a meme on a barbecue page. It was a barbecue page, right?
No, it was on a friend's page, and it was that picture that's been going around Facebook of Five Guys where it's just IV and then guys where the F and the E aren't lit up. So then I put this meme up, and it's a picture, somebody sitting in a burger joint with Jeffrey Dahmer's head on the body. And it says, this doesn't taste like there's Five Guys in this. And I've got 3 days in Facebook jail and evidently 30 days of Facebook probation.
Yeah, so for guys that didn't hear it, I might have muffled it, but he basically put up a meme that had Jeffrey Dahmer in a Five Guys restaurant and said, didn't taste like Five Guys are in here. No nudity, no nipples, no vulgarity, but somebody obviously in Michigan or Wisconsin was still upset about seeing Jeffrey Dahmer's face, so he's out of there. Anyways, something as stupid as that gets you off the page, and that's ridiculous. So he's on 27 days of restrictions, not probation, just restrictions.
Restrictions.
And so he can't do a live video. You should try to. Can you add yourself? See if I can add you, Dan.
We
haven't tried that yet.
Yeah, then I would have to end this call here. So let me end this call and
here,
see if I can.
I just added you. It says no answer from your live post.
Yeah, that means that I can't.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, we obviously went through a few things. We're down to 9 guys. That just tells you that we're boring them, but we'll get better. We'll close out with a little parting shot.
At least it's not 5 guys.
That's my poster from the Nationals from 2 years ago that I made. So everybody have a good night. We'll get some trivia and stuff lined up next weekend and be a little bit better. Maybe next week I'll head out to BDO's and we'll do a little polishing on one fender of my truck because he can detail and talk about all the compounds and absolutely everything that he does because it's remarkable at what he can do to a paint job to make it look 10 miles deep. That's for sure. So, very good. What do you think?
Well, I think for this week, for temporary, I think it works temporarily. So,
and see, just so you guys know, Dan wanted me to do something like this next to the computer so you can see us both. But it gives me a bubble chin, and I didn't really want to hug Dan like this. You know, we were going to talk like this.
Oh, man. Hey, put your arm down. That smells. Put your arm down.
Back to Street Outlaws. BDO is turning the channel. So you guys have a good night. We'll talk to you later. We'll get better at this. I think I'm going to move this to the garage next week, so I'm at least in a car enthusiast place, and we can talk about other stuff if I'm not at BDO. So you guys have a good night, and I'm out of here.
All right.
Peace.
Later.